going to be a guide on how to make liveries work in Gran Turismo Sport. This video that I'm going to make in the series. Today I'm going to be talking about very basic stuff that will help you understand the overall view of how liveries work in Gran Turismo Sport, and hopefully the same applies to Gran Turismo 7 when that comes out next year. I'm doing this as a live stream, so the video quality may not be 100%, and I don't have the fanciest video editing software, so I'm doing it in the best way that I can. But I feel like this knowledge is going to be useful to somebody, so hopefully you do find use from this and it does help you become a better livery maker. So I'm going to cancel out of this. When you first start up the game, this is a screen that you're going to see. When you move over here to the left, you're going to see a livery editor icon, which is a paintbrush and a pestle. So if you click on that, you have three options. I'm mostly going to focus in this series on car liveries, but I might later create some videos concerning helmet liveries and also suit liveries. For the car liveries, you have two options here. So one is going to be making a new design, and one is going to be opening a design. Now, unfortunately for Gran Turismo, and this might come to news as for you, is that you can't download a livery from somebody else and edit it. However, you can open a design that you had worked on before and continue working on it. Or you can start with a new design. If we start with a new design, it's going to give you your list of cars that you have currently in your library, in your garage, so to speak. And if you pick any car, let's say I want to pick the Huracan, it's going to give you what is called a default livery that comes with your purchase of the car. Now, different default liveries have different kind of quirks to them. You might enjoy the default liveries already, so you don't necessarily feel that you have to make a custom livery, but I feel that most people want to have a custom livery to personalize themselves on the track. Now, you can't edit the default livery. It simply won't let you do that. But you can take screenshots of the livery from different angles if you want to recreate it, and then add your own personal flair to it later. The one interesting thing about these default liveries that I do want to point out, some of the decals are actually models in of themselves that exist above the car surface, and they're not actually painted onto the car. So in some cars, especially some Group 2 cars, you'll notice that the decals are floating off the surface by maybe a few millimeters. That's not something that's noticeable when the car is going by, but I do find that interesting. And it also means that the decals themselves that are put on the default liveries are much higher quality than you can actually replicate. That being said, let's move forward. If you want to edit the car, you have a bunch of different options here. Exit is pretty self-explanatory. It will give you a warning if you're already working on a design. So if I go back to the car, let's pick a different car. Let's go with the Focus. Save. This is actually a complicated part of the section that you might want to take some notes for, because it does impact how your livery is saved and how many of them are saved. If you go to the save section, it gives you the option to name your car. Whatever you name it, that's going to show up as the livery name when you go to pick your livery later, and if you do upload it, it will be the default name for the livery when you go to upload it. So keep that in mind. The color chip is interesting, because it's a color chip that shows up next to your name when you join a lobby and you start a race. If you have that livery on, it'll show the three-color chip, which you can see at the top right of your screen currently, and you can edit that. You can make this any color that you choose. If you're already using custom colors on your car, they'll show up below the color picker, and you can use those in the actual chip, and that will show again when the race starts. Now, if you have a design that you've already done some edits to, you'll have the option of save and save as. And save as will not change your current project, it'll save it as a new project. But if you click save, then it will overwrite your previous livery. And sometimes you do want to do that, so keep that in mind. The options sections will, or the options section, will give you ways to better approach your livery. You can increase the exposure, which just makes everything brighter. If that helps you see what you're doing or make things darker, then that might be something that you want to do, especially if your TV resolution isn't what you would like. I'm not sure too much about the rest of these options. It might be something that I look into later, but it's not something that I've ever had to change. All of these options are pretty good as standard. Now the default will be white, but I'll show you that there are different backgrounds that you can use, and that'll help you better see what's on the car. Racing items are very interesting, but before we get into those, I do want to discuss preview, which allows you to see the car without any sort of HUD getting in the way, and you can turn the car around, look at it, zoom in, zoom out, and if you hold down the R1 trigger and then move your joystick, you can actually move the car back and forth, which is helpful if you're trying to look at very tight spaces on the car. Alright, for choose background, you have this white background, which is the default, but it doesn't really represent what the car looks like on the track. There is a black version, which in my opinion helps you see the contrast of the colors better than any other option. So if you want to test out your colors here, this is a good place to do it as well. And it also is less hostile to your eyes. You might want to do some editing in this if you want to take a break on your eyes. The other option is outdoor. The outdoor option is what the car is represented on the track. It shows realistic lighting. The only disadvantage of this is it only really lights up one angle of the car, which I think is approximately this angle. So if you're looking at anything from this side of the car that you want to edit, you're going to have to use the other backgrounds to better see what you're doing, especially in these darker areas. Alright, so paint. This gets interesting. This is where we're going to have to discuss some in-depth things. So, when you go to paint the car, it's going to ask you if you want to keep the default livery. And if you do, you're basically not able to do anything with the car other than change the tires. And I imagine that you want to do a lot more than that. So what you do is you click yes. Now, what it's going to do is are in the base paint that it was for the default livery. But if there are parts of the car that have been colored in, so to speak, with carbon fiber, you probably want to just go this far and then go back and put the decals on and try to work with that carbon fiber, because oftentimes the paint actually covers the carbon fiber that you apply to it at this point. That's up to you. There are custom paint colors that you can work with over here. You have a pretty broad selection of colors, but you might want something more specific. Maybe your team tells you they want a particular color combo, so you go down here to the color picker, and this color picker can be kind of glitchy, so you want to go with the H number first, I believe, and then work your way up the other numbers. If you try to make the other numbers first, it'll reset the H number, which is unfortunate, but that's how you do it. You have to do it in that particular order. So let's say you want 37, 80, 80, and then you click OK. Or you could manually drag this around to find a particular color that you think matches a decal. Sometimes that's what I have to do. but that's how you would do that. There are different paint types that you can use. This solid is the more common one that people use because it is the default one and it better matches the decals if you're going to incorporate decals in the design that are the same color. But there is also the metallic version of the paint, which I don't think is nearly as good or stands out nearly as much as the pearl paint, which you can barely see the difference here, but it does show up on the track. It does little things which I can demonstrate to you better if I do it in white. As you can see, this pearl white has really great shading for the contours of the car, and at certain points it almost shines kind of like a diamond. But if you make it the solid, it's almost like they just plastered regular old wall paint on the car, which may be something that you want to do, but that's the difference there. And as you can see, when we go to special color, I'll address that first before going back to the other topic. You can get these special colors in the mileage exchange. You can also get rims in the mileage exchange, which I might talk about in the future at some point. But there's a bunch of different colors that you can buy on the game, and in my opinion, it is quite frustrating if you're looking for a particular special color because you do have to scroll through all of them, but this demonstrates how many different kinds of special colors that they have. They have colors organized by their color, colors with different levels of shine to them. You got some chromes, you got some fluorescent paints, you got paints with that would not be it, but you have paints with little pieces of I don't even know what it's called. Maybe I'll find it when I scroll out here, because I never use this, but if it's something, yeah, flakes, this might be something you want to try. I don't normally, but sometimes it looks really good for certain designs, and it does have a nice glimmer to it. Might be something you want to try, but this is not something that you can do with decals. You have to have the special paint to do that. So that would address the paint. As you can see, you can actually paint the different parts of the car and what those different parts actually represent, because the name can be misleading. Depends on the car, and I will go into depth on each car about where the actual areas are. Another way that you can check to see what area is which is when you go to the decals, so we'll go there next. And this is a new section, so you see there's different work areas that correspond with the painted areas usually on the car. If you go to verify work area, as you can see at the bottom, all you have to do is hold down your right joystick and it will show you the differences between the different areas of the car, like it's showing in blue the body because that's what you have selected right now. If you want to go to the hood and then you do that, then it'll show you where the hood is. So that's a pretty useful tool. It tells you what exact surfaces you can actually put decals on. But that's how you navigate through the different areas. You'll find it frustrating on some cars that there are areas that you can't actually put decals on, so that is something to keep in mind. You want to make sure you have knowledge about that before you start your design or start figuring out what the design is going to look like. The decal texture settings is very interesting because it's almost like a second paint option. When you put a decal on the car, it has its own paint, and you can choose between gloss, semi-gloss, matte, and powder on what the paint on that decal is going to look like. What's interesting is that even though there aren't a lot of matte options in the game for the actual base color of the car that you use for the paint, you can actually cover the entire car with a decal and then make it matte, and that'll work just fine. If you actually want to add a decal, you'll go over here to add layer, and it will add it to the list of layers that is allowed for that particular part of the car. Like if you go to the body, it's usually 300 layers, as you can see in the top right. If you add the layer, there are different ways of adding layers, and I'll go more into depth about how to actually apply decal accurately to the surface of the car in a future video. But this is how you would access the different vantage points, and then choosing a decal. It'll give you the list of decals, and I'll go into a video navigating this screen as well, because this is a lot more complicated, probably take twice as long as what the video has already been. Alright, so the wheels, as you notice, it keeps the default wheels in the default paint before you do anything. So if you want to keep that, if you think that looks cool, then you're all set. However, for rally cars you have different wheels. For other cars you only have to choose one wheel. And you can find all the wheels that you've purchased on the mileage exchange here. And all of these are paintable, and depending on the car, some of them are resizable. And you can also arrange this by brand. If you know the exact brand that you're looking for, then you can go to that brand and it'll limit the amount of wheels that you can choose. You can also change the tire sticker. A lot of tires have a tire sticker that isn't actually available from the list, so you might want to choose that. So you'll keep that. You can choose to have none, which might work for a lot of street cars. And you have all of these. You have many different variants of the Michelin tire, and you have one variant for everything else. But the ones that are my favorite are this Michelin tire, the Pirellis, and the Bridgestones. And the Hancooks, actually. I really like the Hancooks. So those might be options that you want to look into, and it really depends on what your livery looks like. And you can actually repaint the wheel itself here, and it operates just like painting the car from the start. So you have access to all the special colors you would normally use for the car itself. And you can also modify the color manually if you wish. Alright, the racing items is very interesting. So you have, if you go into the racing number, this is how you apply a default number plate. You can look through the different options. As you can see, there are at least 20 options. Some of them have more, some of them do not. And the way to apply the default one that comes with the default livery is to go down here to default. But all these other ones are actually ones that you can number. You can put your own custom number in them, which is quite nice. And I will discuss why this might be useful even if you have a custom number plate later. You would modify the number if you actually applied it over here. So if I wanted to put 55, then it shows up. Some cars have the number plate in very not ideal locations, I'll just put it that way, especially on the hood. So there are ways of addressing that, and I will go into that in more detail depending on the car. It might be discussed on a per car basis. The driver name can be activated here, and it will typically put the driver name up here above the side window and put it on both sides, but there are some cars where it might put it down here. It really depends on what the car is inspired by, what series. So white obviously is not going to show up on white normally, but I can see they're putting it in the side window, which is sort of unique for this car. But normally it would put it up here. It displays your flag for your country of origin, whether you're using a VPN. That's up to you, but you can, I guess, doing so, actually change the flag that you're using here and your username. If you want to make a custom one, you probably want to leave this off and then apply it as a decal. The windshield banner is right up here. There are only maybe 2 or 3 cars in the entire game where you can actually have a custom one, and that's because it's a paintable area. But for everything else, you have a choice between white, which looks like this with the Gran Turismo logo on, black, which looks exactly the same with inverted colors, or you can have normal, which in this case applies the black one because that's what came in the default, but if you have some cars like the RCF with the GT Open banner, then you can actually apply that by choosing the normal option. The light cover can be changed for some cars. It really depends on the cars. I'm pretty sure all Group 3 and Group 4 cars can have their lights changed from yellow to white. In fact, let me go over to a Group 3 car to demonstrate that. And as you saw there, when you exit a livery, it will warn you whether or not you want to actually leave the project. So you saw that demonstrated there. So we got a Ford Mustang here. As you can see, you got the front headlights. If you want to change the light cover, this is how you do it, and you would make it yellow. I don't recommend doing this, at least from a realism standpoint, unless you're doing a multi-class championship, or if you're looking at it from a aesthetic standpoint. It really depends on the car and livery that you're working with. If your livery has some sort of yellow theme to it, I can see something like this working. But otherwise, my advice is to work with clear headlights only, because you can guarantee that those will look good for any livery that you make. So that's it that I'm going to cover today. I will show you very briefly at the end of this stream how to actually apply a livery to a car that you've already made. Like if you've collected one, you will go to Discover page, find a livery that you want to apply. Let me see if I can find something that's not something inappropriate for the stream. Okay, I want a good one. Let's say I take this Audi. I'm going to add it to my collection, which is essentially the same thing as adding anything else to your collection. And it'll put it in your car livery part of your collection. And you'll add that. If you go back to your livery, actually don't go to your livery editor, go to your home and go to your garage. You're going to try to find that same car. So I'll go and find. Here we have one right here. You're going to change into that car. Make sure that you're in it at the time that you want to change the livery. And go to your change car livery. Now it's going to show you liveries that you have made first in my library. But if you go to collection, then you can go to the livery that you collected. For the purposes of my guide, you're really going to want to focus on the My Library part, and this is how you can apply your livery to more than one copy of the car that you actually worked on. So if you apply that and you say OK, it will apply it to your car, and then it will show up in your garage with that livery on it. Alright, I noticed that there are a couple of comments. I'm not looking at them currently, so I'm going to address those comments before I end the stream. Let me bring up my channel. Oh, it's just Ethan vibing. Okay. Yeah, I agree that the yellow would look pretty ugly on a lot of different cars, but it does work for a Subaru, surprisingly, if it has a blue paint job or a blue livery, because the blue and the yellow really work together. But again, that depends on what kind of blue you're using. You definitely don't want to use like a more turquoise blue with yellow headlights. That's why my best advice is to just avoid using yellow headlights at all. Like, it's just too tricky. But yeah, I'm going to end the stream here. This is part 1. I'll go into more detail about how the rest of it works, and then I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.